Hi everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Miranda Mills and I'm recording this on a Sunday afternoon in London. It's quite a nice day out, but I've had quite a lot of work to do, so I've been mainly in today. However, on a Sunday I always like to cook something a little bit special for the evening, and I also like to plan what sort of food I'm going to be cooking a little bit during the week. So I thought today it would be quite appropriate to share with you some of the cookbooks that I've bought this autumn. I absolutely adore cookbooks. I have a huge collection of them, and cooking and eating is a real passion of mine. So there were some cookbooks coming out this autumn that I was really excited about, and I thought I'd share them and my thoughts on them with you all. So first up was the new Nigel Slater Green Feast for autumn and winter. I'd bought his spring and summer cookbook before and I really enjoyed that. All of the recipes in the Green Feast cookbooks that Nigel Slater is doing are vegetarian, and these books have actually had quite a big impact on my life, because I would say for the past month or so, I have swapped to mainly cooking vegetarian food at home. And I was such a big meat eater before. I do still eat meat when I go out. I eat meat and I do sometimes still cook meat at home. But I have made the switch to eating mainly vegetarian and I'm really loving it. And I think that a big part of why I'm enjoying that so much is because there's some really great vegetarian cookbooks out there now. And these ones that Nigel Slater is doing are so good. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Nigel Slater anyway. I've been collecting his cookbooks for a long time. I love the way he writes about food and I really like his recipes. I would say that you maybe need to tweak his recipes to your taste a little bit. I find that he has very definite taste himself. So, for instance, I can tell that he likes things with quite a sharp, sour taste. And I think I have much more of a sweet tooth than he does. So I will sometimes adjust his recipes a bit to just suit my taste a little bit better. But what is great about his recipes is that they are so adaptable and very user-friendly in that way. So if any of you are thinking of going vegetarian or just incorporating more vegetarian dishes in your sort of weekly meals, then I really would recommend looking into Nigel's vegetarian books. I'll share some of my favourite recipes that I have been cooking so far. Yes, so this one, mushrooms, chickpeas and tahini. He's really got me into eating a lot more mushrooms, and they do act as a great meat replacement in a way because they're so flavourful. And in this recipe he uses those really sort of big portobello mushrooms that you stuff and roast. And this is a really yummy dish. I like the addition of sesame that just adds a little bit of texture, and I really like chickpeas and tahini. It's just a really nice flavour combination, this one, and it's really easy to do, which is great. Another trick that Nigel does a lot is he uses muffins, a little bit like you would toast, I suppose. When I say muffins, I'm talking about the English kind of muffins too, not the American kind. So they're savoury, and he tops them with lots of different toppings. I mean, here he's using mushrooms and blue cheese, but you can kind of do whatever you want. And I really love this idea because muffins keep very well. They often last better than bread. They're really easy to toast, and this makes just such a nice, easy lunch for when I'm at home. Okay, so another favourite of mine is this tahini, sesame and butternut soup. You can probably tell there's a recurring tahini theme here. I really like it though. I like that sort of sesame taste, I guess. And this makes a really delicious soup that is perfect for winter and autumn. Nigel himself has said that he absolutely adores the autumn and winter and that he actually really comes alive during those seasons. And I think you can tell that from this cookbook. I liked his spring summer one, but I didn't love it. This one I really love. I think you can tell that these are Nigel's seasons. He's so inspired with the food that he suggests making, with the recipes that he creates in this book, and I'm really loving it. It's just packed full of really great recipes for this time of year. Okay, another book that I bought in the autumn is food related, though it isn't strictly a recipe book at all. It's A Cheesemonger's History of the British Isles by Ned Palmer. I adore cheese. I mean, I couldn't be vegan because I couldn't give up cheese. And I'm also just interested in British cheeses. I partly grew up in France, so I have a very deep-rooted love for French cheese, of course. But since moving to London, one of my favourite places to go in Marylebone to meet with friends is La Fromagerie on Marylebone High Street, and they do amazing cheese boards from their cheese room, and I often try their British cheese board, and it has introduced me to a lot of British cheeses that are really delicious, and I think that British cheeses are really having a real comeback at the moment, and I think that this book will explore that. It will explore the history of British cheese, maybe why it went through a bit of decline and how it's coming back more now. So I'm really curious to read this, and I think this would also be a great book to give to anyone who you know loves cheese. Okay, another cookbook I bought, but in all honesty, I don't know how much I will end up cooking from this book. I am a fan of Downton Abbey, although I haven't actually seen all of the seasons. I think I've only seen the first season, which I liked, and then the second season I just kind of lost interest in a bit. I should probably go back and try it again sometime, because I know how many people love it. So I didn't actually buy this because I'm the biggest Downton Abbey fan. I bought it because the author Annie Gray came on Tea and Tattle podcast, which is the podcast I host, a few years ago. And on that podcast, she talked about her book, The Greedy Queen, which looked at Queen Victoria's life through the food that she ate and enjoyed. And it was a really fascinating book. And on that interview, Annie mentioned that she was doing the Downton Abbey cookbook. So when I saw that it was out, I thought I really have to get this, because I always like supporting authors that have come on the podcast. And this looks really nice. I mean, it's got really beautiful photographs. If you're a fan of Downton Abbey, then I think you would love this. Even if you're just interested in the history of British food, which I am, from this time period, from the kind of 1920s and 30s, then I think that this would be a really nice book. Annie is very knowledgeable on the history of British food, so there's some really interesting stuff in here, and that's really why I'm enjoying this cookbook. Okay, next is From the Oven to the Table by Diana Henry. I adore Diana Henry. She's one of my very favourite food writers. I've seen her speak about her books at Daunt Books in London, and she's got such a warm, lovely personality that I think really comes over in her books as much as it does in person. And I was really excited that she had a new cookbook out. There's been a real trend lately, I think, in cookbooks and sort of recipes in general that are just really easy to do and kind of only require a roasting tin, essentially. And this cookbook sort of goes with that theme. A lot of the dishes are just ones that you can easily pop in the oven and then pull out, and you've got supper ready. So that really appeals to me. I'll share a few of the recipes that I've been making and enjoying. This one is the seared and roast duck breasts. You sear them first and then you put them in the oven, which makes them really easy to cook perfectly, which is lovely. And they're served with Asian flavoured plums. I love duck, and when I am cooking meat now, I like to cook meat that's a little bit more special. Duck always feels quite special to me. It's also a dish that in some ways brings up funny memories. When I was just in New York with my dad, we went a couple of times to a local Chinese restaurant in Babylon in New York where he lives, and we celebrated his birthday there, and we had duck with the sort of Asian plum sauce. So that brings back those memories for me now. This is one I've also made as well. It's really lovely and simple. Her baked nectarines with pistachios and rose water. I think that baking or roasting fruit always makes such a wonderful dessert. It's so easy, but it's so tasty, and it's a real way that you can also enjoy the bounty of the season. And with that said, I haven't made this one yet, but I really want to, especially for this time of year. I think it would be really lovely. Baked apples with toasted rye, mincemeat, and cider brandy cream. So there are just some really nice, easy recipes. Again, ones that I feel would be especially good for autumn and winter, because they're the sort that you can just bung in the oven and hopefully forget about. And another real favourite of mine, Mary Berry. I adore Mary Berry. I use her recipes for Christmas loads, and she's just someone that I will always fall back on when I want to cook something and I want it to go right. And I think that's what's really great about her books, even when I want to sort of branch out and try a new recipe when people are coming over, which, you're not really meant to do. With her, I actually feel safe. I feel I can cook something new to me and it will still turn out well. So there aren't many people you can say that about, but Mary really does that. So her latest cookbook is Mary Berry Cooks Up a Feast. This is really aimed for dinner parties and special occasion food, which I don't really make so much now. I live in a really small flat in London and I have a very busy life, so I don't necessarily have loads of people around for supper, but you can also easily either double up or halve her recipes, which is really good. So I've still been cooking from this and really enjoying it, but if you are looking for recipes for serving a bigger group of people, then this one would be really great. I love making soup at this time of year, and I've made this sweet potato soup with cumin and ginger. And that's so tasty. I love the flavours of cumin and ginger together, and it's also just really easy to do, which is fantastic. Mushroom stroganoff is also really tasty. Like I said, I've been cooking a lot with mushrooms lately. This is really easy to make, but is really flavourful. And I love that about her recipes. She's so practical with them. She also gives little tips. So she tells you how best to prepare ahead. She says if you can freeze it or not, and whether you can sort of make something a few hours or a day or something like that in advance, and how long it will keep often too. So it's full of really handy tips, which I love. And I absolutely adore loaf cakes. They're a real weakness of mine, not just to eat myself, but I also like to bake them as a present for people. So this recipe is really great, her apricot and cherry loaf cakes. It actually makes two, so I think it's a really nice one to make if you want to keep a loaf cake for yourself and then give one as a gift to someone. Next up, Jamie Oliver. I'm a big fan of Jamie Oliver, and as I am cooking a lot more vegetarian now, I was really excited by his veg cookbook coming out. In general, I've not cooked massively from this yet, but I have made quite a few of the recipes. My very favourite cookbook of his is, I think it's called 5 Things. It's the one about just using 5 ingredients. And I think that still is my very favourite cookbook. There are a lot of vegetarian recipes in it that I've made, and I just love it because it's so easy and the recipes in it are genuinely quite fast to do. And this one, they're a bit more complicated in that the ingredients lists are longer, but I still do really like this one. And I've made a few things from it. I've made this bold black bean soup that was really tasty. Like I said, I really like making soup this time of year. I tend to make soup and then I'll heat it up in the morning and put it in a thermos and bring it into my office. And I've done that with this soup. It turned out really well and was really delicious. Also the silky fennel soup I've made, and that was really, really good too. So I haven't cooked a huge amount from this one yet. I have made some of the soups. I think I probably prefer Nigel's book in terms of the recipes are just really easy to adapt to my preferences, but I still do like this one and I think I'll be cooking a lot more from it. Okay, and this one, Heritage Apples, isn't a cookbook, but it is about food, or more specifically, apples. And it's just a beautiful book. It's by Caroline Ball and it's illustrated with Victorian apple paintings, which are really beautiful. And she just talks about all different sorts of apples, all the different varieties of English apples and their history and whether they're good for cooking or baking. And I'm finding it really interesting. I love going to local markets in London, and there's a shop in Shoreditch. I think it's called Layla's. I always get the shop name slightly wrong, but I think it is Layla's. And they sell really interesting varieties of fruit and vegetables. And I've picked up apples from there with really curious names. And now I can actually look them up and see the history of those varieties with this book, which is wonderful. Another cookbook I bought more to read, although I think the recipes will also be really nice in it, is The Little Library Year by Kate Young. It's recipes and reading to suit each season. Well, I'm certainly someone who loves food as well as books, so this was like the perfect book for me. And I've been really enjoying flicking through it. Kate has lots of really delicious looking recipes, but she also talks about what books are good to read in each season, and she chooses recipes appropriate to some of the books that she selects. So, for instance, she talks about tuck boxes and recipes for that at the start of autumn when you might want to read a lot of back-to-school stories, which I think is really charming. So this is a really lovely read if you love books and food too. This one, I haven't actually cooked anything from it yet because it was quite a recent purchase. It's Nothing Fancy by Alison Roman. Alison is a Brooklyn-based food writer, and I really love her sort of chatty, cool girl sort of vibe that she brings to her cookbooks. I wanted to read a little bit from the introduction of this one just to give you a sense of her voice, because I think she's got a really distinctive writing voice when it comes to food, and I find it really fun. So she says, "This is not a book about entertaining. Roasting a chicken for people is such a good way to say I love you. I recently found this note to myself, scrawled on the back of an electrical bill I had probably forgotten to pay. Written one night after a dinner party. There was likely a lot of wine that night. The best ideas always come from a lot of wine, which explains my poor penmanship and well-intentioned but fragmented deep chicken thought. Not exactly poetry, but I realised after reading the note that it was the first time I articulated exactly what I wanted this book to be about, and what I want you to get out of it, because using your time and resources to feed people you care about is the ultimate expression of love. And love is about expressing joy, so the other thing I want you to get out of it is you can do this. I've always been allergic to the word entertaining, which to me implies there's a show, something performative at best and inauthentic at worst. But having people over, well, that's just making dinner, but with more people. Unfussy food, unfussy vibes, and the permission to be imperfect, no occasion necessary. Other than to eat, of course. So I think this is such a friendly, sort of accessible book if you want to branch out into entertaining, and I know she doesn't like that word, but having people round having a sort of casual, informal setting for inviting friends over for a meal. This book looks great, and I love some of her entertaining ideas. One of my favourite ideas of hers is she suggests, to show you, she suggests doing a hot potato, what does she call it? Yeah, baked potato bar, which I think sounds so much fun. She basically roasts potatoes, but then has it with really sort of luxury condiments like salmon roe and caviar to top it with. She's serving champagne, and then more normal toppings as well, like sour cream and so on. And I just think that sounds so fun. I think that would be such a fun party to have, maybe around bonfire night. So definitely November would be a good time to do this. And I just love that idea of making something really informal, but just amping it up a bit. I think that would be such a fun idea. But there are lots of recipes, as you can tell, that I've bookmarked in this one to try, and I think it will be a cookbook that I really love. And finally, another cookbook that I've been really excited to get this autumn. It's the new Pioneer Woman cookbook, The New Frontier. So it's The Pioneer Woman Cooks the New Frontier by Ree Drummond. So this is another American cookbook. Ree lives on a working cattle ranch in Oklahoma, and she has the most incredible life. And I've been following her work for years and years. I love her recipes. They're especially good for feeding larger amounts of people, understandably, because she feeds so many cowboys and her big family. But I've made many of her recipes for things like birthday parties. I made her tres leche cake, memorably for one birthday party of mine, and people absolutely loved it. Whenever I cook any of her recipes for a party, they always disappear. People just adore them. And I love her down-to-earth attitude about food as well. I haven't made much from this one yet because I only got it very recently, but I'm looking forward to diving into it more over the coming months. And that's it, all of the cookbooks that I bought this autumn. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'd love to know what cookbooks are inspiring you at the moment, and do you have any of the ones that I've shared today? Now, I will link all of the books in the description box down below, so check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, then please do subscribe to see more from me. But I'll be back with another video again soon. So until then, goodbye.